Well, good afternoon, everybody, and I'd like to welcome you all to the launch of our Places Matter guide. It's a very exciting event for us, and we're delighted so many of you have taken the time to attend. I'd like to welcome, we've got member chambers, we've got board members, we've got partners, we've got community groups, we've many experts in these areas, we've councillors, elected representatives, we've a couple of TDs and senators signed up as well, and local authority staff vital to this. So you're all very welcome, and I hope you're going to find this session very, very fruitful. There are going to be two separate discussions that are going to be led by two of our colleagues from around the Chamber network. The Chamber network, as many of you will know, we've 40 affiliated chambers of commerce around the country. The key USP for our organisation is that we're in touch with what's happening locally on the ground with business and community. So this is a really important area for us to both be involved in, be seen to be involved in, and be engaged by yourselves in. So this is the second actually in a series of Places Matter type books where we've sought to go out and find out what's happening around the country, what the best ideas are, and get them into a central place so they can physically be used then to generate new ideas, peer learning, and so on. So we're really excited to bring out this one, which is obviously particularly focused on what local authorities were able to achieve last year in the summer opening last year, and hopefully help people with their ideas and thoughts for how things happen this year. Want to also to talk about the fact that we've been heavily engaged with the Urban Design Committee. We've been involved with the architects in RIAI, and we're also publishing a top tips guide today as well, that again will hopefully give you some points of learning and assistance. So looking at the two panels, the first of these will look at sustainable urban spaces, and the second will focus on the culture and age-friendly towns. We urge all of you to engage with local consultations on how we can open up our streets and how we get our urban economies and spaces really opened up to help businesses to regenerate from the pretty gruesome last year and a half that they've suffered, and also to make our communities welcoming places again. So it's very much a dual agenda here. And we also, we encourage people to engage with those local consultations themselves and how we open up our streets. I know I live in Fingal, there's a couple of consultations going on here, and it's really important that we get to hear people's ideas and thoughts on how to make sure we make this a success. So this is a real call for action. The documents we have today are actually only as good as the input we get. So what's another thing that's really important to us is that you keep sending us your ideas so we can keep profiling them. We've a website which is hopefully easily enough named sustainabletowns@chambers.ie. And we really want you to keep sending in your thoughts and your ideas and your questions. And we'd like to make sure that we can keep moving the conversation forward. It's only starting, we're all part of it. So let's all play our part. So with that, the first session is going to be on sustainable urban spaces, and it's going to be chaired by my colleague Ken Tobin, who's the Chief Executive of the Tralee Chamber Alliance. So Ken, if I can pass it over to you.
Thank you, Ian, and welcome everybody to today. Just to go ahead and go through a couple of tips and protocols. At the bottom of your screen, we've got a Q&A function. So after our panelists have presented, we'll have an opportunity for everybody here today to maybe pose some questions to them, and we'll present that at the end. To kind of put it in context before we introduce our panelists, I just want to kind of give a little bit about myself. As Ian mentioned, I'm the Chief Executive of Tralee Chamber. Tralee would be very typical of many of the towns around the country. As well as wearing my chamber hat, I'm a local business owner. Myself and my wife, we have a small restaurant in Tralee. And to be fair, my wife carries most of the load of that work. But also I'm involved in hubs and remote working as well. Myself and my business partner, Tom O'Leary, we've got 3 hubs now in Kerry, all based in town centres in both Tralee and Listowel. So we're very passionate about trying to encourage and get people back to our towns. Aside from that, I suppose my main passion is about our town centres, and I'm absolutely pig-headed when it comes to the fact that I believe there is a future for our town centres and for our city centres. and for being more open and diverse in the types of jobs that we create and we support. I think our towns do have a future, and that a future is about attracting a diverse range of people and jobs. And for me, that kind of leads nicely into our three panelists today, who I would consider as change makers, people that are really driving new ideas, fresh thinking and collaboration. First up today, we'll have Marian O'Donnell, who is the media manager with Dublin Chamber. Quickly on after her will be Mags Downey, who's the CEO of Ballina Chamber, and then we'll have Sharon O'Gara, who's an architect with Kildare County Council. So without further ado, I'm going to open it up to Marian O'Donnell.
Thanks very much for that introduction, Ken. I'm just going to get my presentation notes up, and hopefully you can all see that. Oh, sorry, how to go back to the start. You'd think after how many months of this I'd have nailed the online presentation format, but alas. There we go. So just to give a little bit of background about myself, my name is Marian O'Donnell. I'm from the public affairs team in Dublin Chamber, and we developed Dublin, the 15-minute city. I think it was around August, September last year, 2020. So we worked on it for a number of months, and what kind of inspired us, the 15-minute city concept was used in cities around the world previous to COVID, but a lot of the it was really accelerated in terms of its rollout as kind of a response to COVID, because it addressed a lot of the problems, because people were living more locally, they were using facilities in their locality, and there's kind of this the idea that they were restricted their movement, and they got to experience what's within their own 15 minutes, what's within their own 5K here. So for those of you who don't know, it's an urban planning concept which focuses on community planning, on the local economy, on transport orientated development, and the livability of a city or a town centre. It works by designing walkable communities where people can live locally and access most of their daily needs within 15 minutes of active transport, walking or by bike. So by that we mean that when you leave your front door, that within 15 minutes you're able to access a certain amount of local facilities, and that includes things like a shop, a pharmacy, a doctor, a park, these things that enable you to live locally within your own community. And for someone like myself, I'm currently on a hiatus in Tipperary, and my local town would have all of those facilities. And it's about looking at our urban spaces in particular, and quite in our city centre spaces, and what of those facilities do they lack. And as well as within that 15 minutes, you're also connected to a key transport hub that it connects you to the wider city. So one of the key points of the 15-minute city is that within 15 minutes, everyone can't have every facility. You have to kind of have a management of the levels. So there's local level services, and then there's higher level services. For instance, every 15-minute community should have access to a GP or a school, but not every 15 minutes would there be a university or a hospital. So it's about the division of those, but making sure that you're connected really well into that space through public transport. So why Dublin and why now? And I think this is the really important part, and it inspired us to do this, was produce this document, was that COVID-19 really acted as this accelerator for change that was already starting to emerge. There's this real desire for more local facilities, more local engagement, and more kind of community-based facilities. Even within our cities, we saw town regeneration schemes in kind of more rural Ireland, but in urban Ireland, there's that same desire and that same need for these facilities. It also comes at a time when local authorities are reviewing their development plans. We've recently had the introduction of the National Planning Framework of compact growth and increased population density that are being encouraged through that. Flexible working really has a power to transform cities, and that's both positive and negative. So there's more opportunities to have kind of rural, urban hubs within our kind of suburban city, but there's also kind of risks that, you know, maybe the city centre might have less people in it on a day-to-day basis, and how do we respond and what does that look like? And for us, the 15-minute city is key to that. And I think part of it as well is that, you know, when we survey businesses, one of the key issues that they come back to us with is that, you know, one of their key issues in Dublin is infrastructure and housing and kind of place-based problems. So the 15-minute city addresses a lot of those, and particularly transport has long been an issue for the city. And just kind of coming as well to the outdoor summer that we're all anticipating, although with weather like today, it seems a little distant from summer, but you see some great images there on your screen of how Dublin City Council has last summer and this summer responded to the outdoor summer pedestrianisation, improving public realm, giving people more space to move around. And even, you know, just yesterday, the Marian row trial, which is on the far right of your screen there, was just approved for kind of a long-term basis over the summer to see how it would work. So then just finally to run through what our vision for Dublin is that within 15 minutes of active transport from their home, Dublin residents should have access to key public transport hub to commute around the city to access work or higher level, more central services, be connected to their local community, and that's through well-connected footpaths and cycle paths, have access to open green space and high quality public realm, and have facilities and services that promote local living and the local economy. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that, Marian. And we'll move on quickly then to Mags Downey, who is the CEO of Ballina Chamber. And you're on mute, Mags.
Now, thank you, Ken. Thanks for that introduction, and thank you to Marian as well, because that's very interesting, because that will feature in my presentation very shortly as well. So Ballina and the Mary Robinson Centre and Ballina Green Town, and what's it all about? So this started back way in March 2020 when our VP, our Vice President Brian Hopkins, and we were all attending the 5th International Human Rights Lectures annual signature event by the Mary Robinson Centre here in Ballina. She herself attends every year and invites global leaders and international voices to our local community in Ballina. But Brian stood up and made a very bold statement following on from a really inspirational speech by Mary, and proclaimed that Ballina will be Ireland's greenest town. Of course, we rolled our eyes and shook and said, how, why, how can this happen? How can we do this? And it was, of course, on the front pages of all the local papers as well. Ballina aims to be Ireland's greenest town. Now, simultaneously, a sustainable energy community was mobilising itself in Ballina. It was working behind the scenes, and this group came together, also calling itself Ballina, Ireland's greenest town. Now, COVID kicked in, and of course, we couldn't do any of our local and usual community engagement work. We couldn't do any of the town hall gatherings that we planned to do to get this project up and running. But anyway, we were very lucky that just before Christmas, we eventually managed to get together to announce our ambitions to be Ireland's greenest town, to get the message out there. And with the support of Mary Robinson as an advocate, the Green Town ambition in Ballina, we'd kind of put ourselves out there to be able, we had to get this going, and we had to do this for our town and our community. So how do you start, and where do you start? And you know, where can this come from, and where do you want to go with this? And we start with thinking global and acting local. And very fortunately, at the same time, a great starting point for us as a group, that in late February of this year, the Mayo County Council had made an announcement that it was inviting communities to apply to become Mayo's first decarbonisation zone. So this gave us a real purpose to focus the group on, to put an application in. We were invited to participate, and just to put focus on where this whole ideology was going forward. We believed as part of the application that Ballina can become a model for towns to decarbonise. We had to believe that by prioritising local action within a defined framework. And when this ideology brought real focus to the group, that's how we could make a really strong application for that. And as we all know, even looking at today's weather, especially in Mayo, we were seeing yearly increases in flooding, storms, and then extreme dry periods, and a large reduction in the nature and wildlife on which we depend. And as part of that, We recognise that our green ambition will bring social, economic and environmental opportunities for Ballina as we move forward. And we understand that the future is green and we will lead the way in this space. We want to lead the way. We want to be placemakers in all of this, and we want to support the region and the county as well. But our strategic action and our strategic vision had to be entwined in 5 particular pillars of that. Ecology, we wanted to become the most biodiversity town nationally. Energy, we wanted to become energy independent for our business community and for our community groups. Economy, we want to become a circular economy. People, we want to become an inclusive town, and similar to our colleagues in Dublin, mobility, we want to become a 10-minute town. And how do we do that? Well, as every chamber member out there knows, and every chamber group, collaboration is key to this. So the first thing we did through the support of the Mary Robinson Centre, we created a green charter. So we invited community groups, schools, business groups, households, local government, everyone to come along and join in this ambitious profile and this ambitious initiative for the town. And we invited everybody to join the Ballina Green Town Charter. To date, we have 120 signed up, and you can go onto the Mary Robinson Centre, and families and individuals with 80 letters of support from the Ballina and the community. And finally, this is where we want to go. This is what we're looking at: new models for living, prioritising people, reimagining our mobility. This is only the start, so I'm encouraging everybody out there, go to the Mary Robinson Centre Greentown website, Ireland's Greenest Town website, and you'll see where we really want to take this on ballina.ie. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mags. That's brilliant. And from one 10-minute town to another, we're amazed by some of the work that you're doing up there. And just to remind everybody that's tuned in today, you can still submit questions using the Q&A tab at the bottom. So we move swiftly along to Sharon O'Gara. Sharon?
Hi, Ken. I'm just going to share my screen. Ooh, yeah, here we go. Okay. Apologies. It seems to be right at the end. Okay. Okay, thanks, Ken, for that introduction, and to Chambers Ireland for asking me to speak today. I'm an architect and urban designer in Kildare County Council. My name is Sharon Gara, and I'm also a member of the RIAI Urban Design Committee. So the RIAI Urban Design Committee are the authors of the Town and Village Toolkit and the adjudicators of the RIAI Tidy Towns Awards, and these, as well as other urban design initiatives, can be found on a dedicated RIAI webpage as follows. So I'm going to talk about one of the tactical urbanism COVID-19 response projects that we completed last year in Kildare Market Square in Kildare Town. And tactical urbanism is really about the reappropriation of public space, the reallocation of road space in favour of people and community orientated spaces. It's low cost, quick to install, high degree of design flexibility, and the potential to catalyse long-term change. This graphic shows how it works in practical terms, and it uses the example of a bicycle lane. So at first, it's about claiming the space using very low cost materials. The next stage is really about implementing it on the ground, investing a little bit more money, being able to trial it and tweak the design in response to feedback. And then if the project is a success after the trial period, it becomes permanent on the ground. If it's not a success, or if it's not popular, it can easily revert back to its original use at a relatively low cost. Just want to show a few examples of tactical urbanism response projects nationally and internationally. This is a public space in Italy in response to COVID-19 with a 1.8 metre grid for social distancing. 1.8 was according to the regulations that the measure used for social, or to be maintained for social distancing, but this is an intervention into an existing public space. The image on the left used teddy bears for social distancing at a cafe in Paris, and the image on the right is from a pop-up tactical urbanism parklet in Cork. So talking about Kildare Market Square, we first started looking at Kildare Town in 2017 after securing funding from the department under the Town and Village scheme. And the funding was to help us to carry out an urban design analysis in the preparation of a town renewal plan or master plan for the town. So initially we looked at Kildare Market Square right at the centre there, and our boundary for analysis was the square, the contiguous urban blocks and the streets that lead to and from the Market Square. So this is just a quote from the Scottish Town Partnership, and it's about mapping the quality of pedestrian experience and how important it is to observe and to experience the space, to see what's working and what's not. And this is the approach we would have taken, and this is just some images from our urban design analysis, but it shows we carried out pedestrian counts as well as movement tracing that looked at how people moved through and used the space. We also looked at car park capacity on different days and different times. And Kildare Market Square, I'm not sure if you can see my cursor, but right there at the centre, it's a very popular place to park in the town. But I suppose our analysis showed that when there was a market on in the square, there actually was ample car park capacity in the car parks within a 1 and 2 minute walk of the Market Square. So this and other analysis combined really helped us to illustrate and to see that, you know, if we were to take the cars out of this space, that the project would likely be a success. So this is a before photograph showing Kildare Market Square in use as a car park, and the neighbouring streets also, there's a high level of on-street car parking. So our concept was about superimposing a grid of representing 2 meters social distancing. So in practical terms, what we did is we laid a blacktop to cover the existing car parking line markings. It gave us blank canvas, and then on that we superimposed a dot, and that was the intersection of the grid, and it was to represent the 2 meters social distancing. It was our way of, I suppose, it was about claiming the space. It was an art intervention, if you like. It was intended to be playful, but also to reference the time that we were in, which is COVID, and this project is the response to COVID. And it gave us the opportunity to trial this project. So this is another before photograph showing the visual clutter in the space. So you can see a lot of signage and a lot of cars in the space. And when we removed all of that and we finished our project, this is the space in use by the community, by the businesses. So place just to linger and spend time and to socialize, and also for outdoor dining. It's a space obviously that's available to the businesses that address the space, the restaurants and cafes, but also in the wider town area, because patrons of other businesses within walking distance can get their coffee or food and come here and sit. So this is a view looking the other way. And then this is further up looking back down into the space. So you can see it in use as for outdoor dining. This space has actually also been used for a number of events celebrating different times of the year, Valentine's Day. Shop fronts have been dressed for Christmas. Here it's in use for a market. And here was a wellness weekend, so we Tai Chi and yoga. And I just finishing up now really, but it's important to say that I suppose from our experience, you can't collaborate enough, you can't communicate enough. It's a highly collaborative process with the area engineers, with the MD, with the elected representatives, with the town teams, the businesses, the community. We have to be open to suggestions and feedback, and to be able to react quickly. And that's where I suppose the beauty of a tactical urbanism project comes in. It gives us the opportunity to trial things, to make change quickly on the ground in response to that feedback. And this just, I want to finish here with this, the last slide, and it's taken from the RIAI toolkit, and it just talks about, I suppose, how the quality of our built environment and how it impacts on the health and well-being of all people. That, there's a lot of evidence to support that good quality urban design can have such a positive effect on people's health and well-being and happiness. And an approach to design which focuses on inclusion, active movement and social interaction is essential in ensuring our towns can respond to our everyday needs. Thank you.
That was amazing, Sharon. And I think, I'm jotting down notes here as I go through it. And I think it's that ability to be able to try things and not be afraid to make a mistake. If something works, brilliant. And if it doesn't, fine, pivot and change. And I think that's something that, you know, I think we can all learn from in towns right throughout the country. And having that more open discussion and collaboration is key to all of that. And it kind of leads us on. Obviously, the Q&A function is available to everybody, but we have a couple of questions that I just want to, I suppose, based on your own submissions and your own discussions there. Marian, I might jump to you first. I suppose one thing I didn't mention is I have a small niche marketing consultancy, and one of the first things I read when I set up the marketing consultancy was a book called Duct Tape Marketing by John Jantz. And the whole book is premised on the idea of good things just stick, you know, good ideas just work. And I suppose we're looking at all these measures now we're trying to put into place as a temporary solution for COVID and, you know, making more mobility and more access. Why aren't they sticking? Why aren't these ideas just working? And what you see as being the obstacles to preventing these fantastic ideas becoming permanent, very much like what Sharon has mentioned?
Yeah, I think what you talk about there about ideas sticking is really relevant with the 15-minute city, because when we started talking about it last summer, you know, there was a little trickle of others maybe speaking about it. We were definitely the first kind of written up document. And now it seems to be the hot buzzword. And I think it's because ideas like the 15-minute city, the 10-minute down, the 10-minute community, they're based on a set of like planning principles, like hyper proximity or transport orientated development, that are really, you know, kind of, they don't stick in on the tongue or the brain, and they don't kind of sink into the same effect of 15-minute city. I can visualize that, I can see it. And I think that's really important in terms of ideas sticking and getting that kind of the political will behind an idea and the public will behind backing an idea. But I think in terms of the pedestrianization, the street art, that which we're seeing in cities, I think, you know, change is good for people who embrace change and bad for those who don't, or they see it as bad. So I think, like in the chamber, what we do a lot of is we advocate for trials and pilot programs and testing things out, because we think it's a great way for those who are more reluctant to change to actually have data that backs up, you know, this isn't actually bad for your business, this is great. You know, I think particularly some businesses out there are really, you know, the parking spaces that they have are like a currency to them. So we need to explain to them that bike parking is a similar currency. And as more people move towards active transport, as our public transport increases in capacity, reliability, and more people use it, then you know, the parking space becomes less valuable. So I think it's that kind of change over time in terms of what's a valuable commodity. And we're seeing that shift really at the moment as more people take up active transport and move to kind of that more pedestrianization, outdoor dining, and want that sense of place to somewhere where they go. So I think that's why it really, particularly the 15-minute city, I think it really sticks in the mind as something visual.
Yeah, and you're right. It is that it's that willingness to change and allowing things time to mature and see if it works and if it doesn't work. And I think, Sharon, the Kildare Square is a prime example of that. And I might just ask you, Sharon, over the past 12 months, we've cocooned, we've bubbled, and we've got used to this social distancing. And probably from what I've seen, the biggest impact has been that social interaction. That prior to all of this, our public spaces were all about encouraging festivals, events, and all of that. And that's going to be difficult now going forward. Is there a way that we can actually make our public spaces work, not only for the short term, for smaller events in the public realm, but long term? And is there small changes that we can just make now that will allow towns to develop and become more interactive?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is probably a bit of a controversial answer in a way, but I think we need to reclaim our streets from the car, and it's about reappropriating the use of our public realm spaces to be more people and community orientated spaces, especially in our town centres. You know, a balance can be struck, but I think a lot of our towns and villages are dominated by cars and car parking. And when you strip some of that, I'm not saying we do it everywhere, but there are certainly scope to do it in parts of our town. Initially, anyway, you can just see, I mean, when we did it in Kildare town, like there's so much beauty in terms of the built heritage and we already had good mature landscaping and in the space, and it was just suddenly this beauty, if you like, was revealed. But I think tactical urbanism really is a great way to do this, and it allows you to trial things in a very low cost and quick way. And also, as I said already, collaboration is key. You know, this project in Kildare is not, you know, it's not credit to one person, but you know, so many people were involved and made it happen and came together and communicated and collaborated really. So yeah, it's about the community and that collaboration between multiple parties.
You're absolutely spot
Thanks.
on. Collaboration is key, and kind of brings me nicely to Mags. Mags, you're in a very similar role to me.
Yes.
You know, we try to in chambers, we try to listen to everybody. We try to be open to all sides of a discussion. You know, never an argument, but always a discussion.
Yeah.
And that collaboration, it's tough at times.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, the tactical urbanism approach to it of trialing things and collecting data, that's probably something that we're nicely positioned to do. How's that going for you in Ballina?
Yeah, you know, as I said before, Ken, we had chats about this. You know, we have many hats on. We try to be all things to all people when you're in a chamber, not necessarily a big chamber, but a medium-sized chamber between festivals and everything else. So the good thing about the last year, and I think Marian alluded to it there as well, that since COVID, we had time to stop and take stock of where we were. And as a town in Ballina, we certainly got to do that. We stopped all the running around, and we have 10 festivals a year, and we actually looked at making plans and policies, which you don't ever get the chance to do. And that's where possibly the whole Green Town idea came from. Equally, there were other people who had thought this way as well. They wanted to contribute and they wanted to give back to the town and the community, and they wanted to take control of the future of the town. And that is where the whole Green Town initiative came from, and where it will be going forward. And collaboration, as Sharon said, there is key to this, whether it's your TDs, your municipal district, your county council, your local councillors, your schools, your business people. Everybody has to be to that. So no one group can do this on their own. And we certainly, Ballina Chamber, could never have done this on our own. I mean, we're so fortunate. It is very fortunate for Ballina that we have the Mary Robinson Centre, and that project manager there, Susan Heffernan, who's been a great support of everything we do, has come on board to help us. Equally with the Green Town team, two great guys involved with that, Kevin Loftus and Councillor Mark Duffy, have supported that. And with that, then we get 120 people to sign up to the Green Charter. We get 80 letters of support from businesses and community groups, and we get 70% of those signatures on the Green Charter are community, it's going back to families. And so for that, you know, collaboration is key. Even going forward, talking about pedestrianisation, you know, it is one of those subjects that is it a controversial type of subject or not? You know, it's all about engagement. It's all about discussion and debate, healthy debate and healthy discussion, and trialing and pilots are definitely the way to push that out and see. And if it works, fantastic, as it is working for Sharon. And if it doesn't, you know, you can always say, well, we tried it.
And obviously, look, the greening Ballina, I can feel the passion about it.
Yes.
But as a chamber organisation, you're membership based.
Yes.
An economic benefit to the businesses.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, I'm only learning this myself, Ken, so I'm not going to say to anybody I'm an expert on that. We have people out there who are the experts, and that's why we rely on them. They're part of our decarbonisation steering committee. We have 20 strong in the committee there, and part of that is that these are experts who are able to advise businesses and even local schools in that, how to get the benefit of, you know, what is the benefit of being a green town, whether it be from an economical point of view, you know, from as I said already, a circular economy, mobility, being more focused on people. I'll just give you an example. Our Ballina Credit Union are giving a retrofit finance model for homeowners who want to refit their home out to be more energy efficient. Equally, our groups are working with large energy users in the town who produce a lot of energy to produce their own energy. And just very quickly, an example that is coming to pass is that our local arts centre is looking at hydro energy because it's based on the banks of the River Moy. I mean, isn't that fantastic? It's going back to what it was. Yeah. So it's great financial benefit. And when it comes down to finance and saving money, that will always talk, go a long way as well, Ken.
I'm going to completely flip the conversation a small bit, and I'm going to throw this one at you, Marian. When we think of sustainable towns, sustainable cities, we're looking at pedestrianisation, biodiversity, living town initiatives and all that. Rarely do we talk about the technology side of it. And I remember going back, maybe 10 years ago, we had this, what we thought was a great system at the time, of a text alert system, that if your bin is full, a text goes off to the local authority and the bins get emptied. But we very rarely talk about the technological side of sustainable towns. And I'd love to hear your views, especially from a Dublin perspective, because I think there's huge learning the other towns can get off of Dublin, because from a technology side of things, you are far more advanced in certain things.
Yeah, and I think a great example of that is the huge success that Dublin Bikes have been in Dublin city centre in particular. And in terms of like bike sharing schemes internationally, the Dublin Bikes is the, I think it's the most successful, but I'm less confident in saying it is. So it's definitely up there in terms of its usage and how well it has been integrated into Dublin and people using it as kind of that last mile solution. And they've just recently actually developed a new app for them, and you can now install a battery on them to make them e-bikes. So you kind of see that, building on the technology that we already have. I suppose leaning on and just noticing some of the questions that are coming in there in the Q&A about parking and how we transition and what that looks like in a city. I think what's really important from our perspective is that we get to a place where our public transport is good enough that the parking becomes less in demand. But there's really good international examples of what cities have done to allow kind of smart technological solutions in terms of allowing cars that are vehicles for loading, for people who have different accessibility needs, to access those spaces while keeping other cars out, and in really like beautiful ways as well. Sometimes we think of technology solutions as being ugly interventions that are barriers, but we can have we can make things beautiful as well. And there's a system actually in Germany, I believe it is, that kind of looks at that sustainably as well. So they have like a traffic light system for cars, and it kind of bleeds into that demand management space about allowing cars that are green and maybe electric into a space, and then not opening a barrier if your car is a polluter. And they do that by putting tags on cars. So I think stuff like that is really emerging in really innovative cities, and we're watching that the whole time. And I think as well, what's really interesting is where retail goes over the next couple of years. We know the retail sector has had a really difficult last couple of months. We had a focus group recently, and a retailer described 5 years of change in 12 months. So, what does the next 12 months look like? And we see this move towards online. So what we're looking at is that experiential retail. How do we support retail, our town centres, and support it with technology, with online, and combine the two. So it's not just a retail experience, but you could have the option, they don't have your size, and you get it delivered to your house straight away, and you're able to do that in store. We see that from some of the bigger retailers. What springs to mind actually is the McDonald's restaurant. You now have the online menu and you can pick out your different bits. But what does that look like in shopping, and how does that expand from city centres to kind of more urban towns and even villages, and how do we support businesses over the next year as they transition to complement those two models?
And obviously, and you touched on it there, retail going forward is going to be about two approaches. It's going to be the technology-led, that multi-channel selling, but the experience is going to be key to it. And I might bring you back in there, Sharon, in relation to the experience side of it. And I'm reminded of a phrase that one of our retailers here said to me recently, because we've got a fantastic URDF paving works ongoing at the moment. But he said to me, they're lovely new paving slabs going down, but they're as entertaining as wet concrete or old concrete. And he's right. How going forward, once we've created these beautiful spaces, how can we ensure that the experience is there on a wet afternoon like today, or a wet afternoon in February? How can we continually make sure that we've provided that customer journey as people come into town, and provide that continual experience? Because it isn't just about paving slabs and benches. It has to be about what people feel and experience in the atmosphere when they come into that town.
Okay. That's a really interesting question. I do actually think it's all about the experience. So, and I know your question is kind of looking forward in terms of a dedicated public space. I would say, let's say with the experience in Kildare, the ability to be able to trial it meant that people could experience it, and then their feedback was based on real experiences. That feedback then will inform a future design solution for that space. What we're used to, let's say typically with an architectural and urban design project, is we come up with a design, we bring people, we show them the designs, and people comment. And certainly you talk about taking away parking spaces, there's a lot of fear. And even when I mean, I don't want to say that, we did everything right, we didn't, but we certainly had great opportunity to learn from the experience, but also bringing the community with us. There were some fears around losing car parking spaces, but when people got to experience the space, that those fears went away, and it's become a huge success. In terms of the future and what a future successful public space looks like, I suppose, some quotes by William Holly White come to mind, in that people vote with their feet. If a public space is successful, it's used, very simply. And he also has a saying that people tend to sit where there are seats. It's actually the simple things, those ingredients, that we can provide the space. You cater to people's needs. People need to sit and people will congregate, but I suppose you have to try it, and it is about good paving. It is about providing that space, but having experiences in the towns when people come into the town. I'm probably not answering this well at all, but it's about place for people to socialize and to linger. And the space needs to be used, I suppose, by people, and that's how I think if it's a success. Like within the first day of us putting down the dots, we hadn't even finished putting down the dots in Kildare Market Square, and all these children appeared and started to play, and it was just so encouraging. And since then we've observed, people of all ages sit there, including teenagers, which are very often forgotten, in terms of places to go in town centres. So I suppose that was our aim, to create a space where everyone was welcome.
And I can see how it happened, and I saw something recently on a video about Hackney, where they created a play street, and it isn't about us over prescribing how they use it, it's about providing and then observing how they use it and catering for that. I might just have a look there at some of the questions, and we've quite a few questions in, and I might open this up to the three of you if that's okay. So we'll see who we catch on the hop with us. How do you cater for older people who need cars to get out and about and will not be able to walk that 15 minutes for purchases, etc.? I'll open up that to anyone that wants to take that question on.
I can take it, seeing as it has 15 minutes in it. I think that's a really, really important point, and I think what's vital with the 15-minute city is that it's not exclusionary, and it doesn't aim to be. And I think it becomes difficult in certain urban spaces to make sure that space is there, but it's really, really important that we do that. I think, for example, what's a good example is Dublin City Council's latest proposal for a pedestrian plaza on College Green, where they've allowed, it's for loading bays and taxis and cars that require that access to keep that access. And I think that's really important. It's about designing urban spaces where you have access, but it's almost seamless and complementary to the overall design. And it's really important that we engage in those communities who have different accessibility needs at a very early stage when putting together those kind of proposals. From a kind of policy perspective as well, I think it's really important for the 15-minute city is that idea of public transport and having public transport within everyone's 15 minutes. And I think, sometimes when we talk about people with access needs, not everyone has a car, not everyone can use a car. And we need to make sure that our public transport is at the highest levels of accessibility. And that's really important for us in the Chamber, as well as, you know, when we talk about pedestrianisation and cycling, and urban spaces as well that remove barriers, you know, that they have really good public realm that doesn't have, you know, cobblestones sticking up and things that reduce people's accessibility. And I think, you know, you can have the best plaza in the world and you can have a car that swoops up and parks illegally on it. So it's about all of those things together, but definitely good planning and design from the start, and bearing in mind everyone's accessibility and access to that space is really important.
Yeah, and you touched on it there. It is about access, and access doesn't necessarily mean the car, but access often is preempted by public transport, and not every town has a public transport system that will enable all ages to be able to come in. And I'll open this up to the three of you. Do you think a decent public transport system should come first before we start looking at all these measures? Sharon?
No, I mean, I think it's a combination. I think it's first it's pedestrian, then the cyclist, then public transport. That we reflect the hierarchy that's I suppose set out in Deemers as well, but that first we look at pedestrian movement in our towns and catering for that accessibility for the pedestrian. Multimodal streets obviously is key, and no question public transport is really important. And we have a situation in a lot of our towns where people do have to drive to get to them, but once they get there, it would be great if they could park and then walk or wheel or park and stride or park and bike to where they need to get to as well. So it's just, and I suppose a lot of our towns, like I said, already dominated by, you know, that the car. So it's just about trying to redesign it and address that modal shift.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of the questions have come in. This might be one for you, Mags, because I know you've done a lot around the collaboration side. So many people, and these are questions coming in, so many people still overestimate how many of their customers arrive by car and underestimate how many people travel by other means.
Yeah.
A lot of the questions have been based around, you know, historically, the car, primary, how do you engage, how do you support the businesses that are concerned about the measures that maybe reduces the reliance on cars?
Yeah, I suppose I'll just take Ballina as an example now. I'm very conscious of other towns around the country because we, again, as a chamber network, we would work collaboratively together to share our experiences. But just from a Ballina point of view, you know, we always acknowledge both sides, Ken. We always want to engage in discussion and have a fair and open debate on the topic, and that's what we will always try and do from a chamber's point of view. Look at the strengths and weaknesses of any town centre and see, how do you, right now at this moment, what is the opportunity for social distancing and how do you reactivate the town centre? Does that mean that cars have to be the most essential element and part of that? Or is it the person coming in, parking and then walking into town? I suppose from a Ballina point of view, we're very lucky. We maintained our town centre vibrancy throughout the last 2 decades. It's a market town, so we have very wide streets. So if you compare us to another similar town, maybe in County Clare, who wouldn't have that sort of market town feeling, you know, is pedestrianisation a necessary need for the town of Ballina? Is it something that we desperately need to have when we have existing wide streets, one-way streets, and we have a crossroads in the junction of the town as well, that, you know, all 4 corners come to one juncture, and that is the line of the traffic. I suppose what we did, going forward, pedestrianisation was brought up last year at the first lockdown. It just didn't come at the right time. There wasn't enough engagement and we didn't talk enough with the business community. This time around, we're very lucky. There's requests for parklets. So there's about 6 parklets going in around the town using additional parking space. So that is the compromise there as well. And just to go back to Sharon and her use of the market square, we are also looking at reactivating our market square, Sharon, and it's fascinating to watch what you did down there, to see how this was the hub area of the town. 20 years ago it was transformed into a functional car park, but now we want to transform it back to what it was intended for. It's in the town centre, and it's a happy medium, and it provides that sense of compromise to all sectors within the community, Ken. So
and there seems to
that
be
answers
a huge amount in Sharon in relation to the Kildare town square. And we have a town here that our market square was actually pedestrianised, I'd say it must be 15-20 years ago, and it is a much loved space in the centre of Tralee now. And we actually have a question in from Minister Pippa Hackett in relation to the space in Kildare. How did you manage the impact on the loss of parking, and was there a negative reaction to this? And then, how has that view changed since you've done the work?
Okay, well, I suppose you probably remember I did include the car parking analysis and the capacity of car parks that were really very close to the centre. One car park in particular, which was less than a minute walk just north of Kildare Market Square, was always underutilised, and now it's packed. So I suppose in assessing the existing car park capacity, we could see that there was capacity in the existing car parks to take or to offset that loss of car parking from the market square. So I suppose that gave us some comfort. There was some reservations around it, because there are people obviously like to be able to park right at the centre, and there was nervousness, and some businesses were nervous about that. But that's all changed from the experience, because the footfall has increased dramatically, and that has brought business to the town. And it's been said to us that it's actually brought the heart back into the town. So it's been transformative. So far so good. But it's an ongoing. We still have to go back and address issues as they arise and so on. Yeah.
Now we only have a few minutes left, so I've got two more questions. I just want to put you. The first one, Marian, I might just come to yourself for this one, and then the last one will be for everybody. Marketing is obviously your area in regards to Dublin Chamber. Did you develop a communications plan around the changes and around the initiatives that you put forward? And is there kind of a few key tips you'd like to be able to bestow on the rest of us to help us with those comms plans? Because communication is critical to all of these.
Yeah, I think it's I talk about a communications person, saying how important communications is seems a bit ironic, but anyway, I think it's really important to be clear from the start with businesses what the approach is. As I've said in a lot of our submissions into the different kind of trial pedestrianizations, it's always been about trial runs, working with the businesses, being as consultative as possible. And, if something doesn't work, tweak it. I think the recent example of Marian Row, as I mentioned earlier, it's a great example because it's business led, it's business backed. They brought the idea forward. They really championed it at a council level. The council talked to the NTA and they said, we can't do everything that they want, but let's meet them halfway. Let's try it. They had a trial run. And now it's proved successful, and they're going to try it long term for the summer and then review after that. So I think that's a really good example. And in terms of how we communicate that to the business community, because anything in Dublin is a challenge, because it's not just the street that's affected, but for something with such public transport corridors, it can actually affect huge tranches of streets around it. So it's about early collaboration with businesses, communicating to them the changes, asking them for their views and opinions as early as possible. As a chamber or as a business organization, as a business representative, or even as a business yourself, if you support something and there's a consultation open on it, 100% make sure that you submit your views. If you support something 80%, but there's, you have a slight issue with one of the things, communicate that into the council. If you don't tell the council, the local authority, whoever's championing the change, what your issues are, or that you're 100% behind it, then they can't get a full picture of what the views are on it. So I think that's really important. And in terms of how we do the 15-minute city, we go in and we use that as our guiding vision in the development plans across the 4 local authorities in Dublin. So just re-articulating that positive viewpoint for each of the consultation levels, I think is really, really important. And I know it's something that the local authorities in Dublin really appreciate us doing, is that we give them a voice for the businesses that we represent, but also we give them a viewpoint that's really important that they have and that they can capture.
Brilliant. Now we have 60 seconds because I'm going to try to give us 5 minutes before Kenny Deary takes over and blows us all away. And I know he's dying to get on because he's got the shirt and tie on. So I want one sentence from each of the three of you. If there was a key takeaway, because we know the frameworks for town centre first policies and everything are being renewed at the moment, one sentence that they have to take on board, or one key idea they have to take on board. We have 60 seconds. So will we go to Mags first?
Yeah, I just want to say people first. People first. Think of the community. Put them, prioritise the community and prioritise the person.
Mags took the words out of my mouth. That's exactly it.
Marian, are you going to go people first as well? Or
No, I'd go collaboration.
Yeah,
I'd go, it's a shared journey, and there's a real need to bring everyone with you. And that's really important.
100% agree.
Yeah, very important.
And are you summing up anything, or are we just going to go for a 5-minute break?
Just a 5-minute break there, Ken. Just we'll kick off again at 4 p.m.
Perfect. So
3 p.m. 3 p.m.
3 p.m. Sorry, 3 p.m.
3 p.m. Grab a cup of coffee, glass of water, and we're going to hand you over to the incredible Kenny Deary next in 5 minutes.
Thanks, Ken.